Let us execute an immediate, sweeping analytical vector shift away from the initial virus of domestic envy, strategic identity theft, and suburban replacement routines, and plunge straight into the high-octane, calculation-heavy tracking grids of dark subterranean execution cellars, weaponized home renovations, and the fiercely protective, dangerously fragile world of an expectant mother running a raw tactical survival loop. We are crossing the threshold directly into the hyper-monitored, blood-soaked foundations of a historical house of horrors, exploring the lethal analytical parameters of an intense, past-fueled deception matrix with Keep It in the Family, the exceptional, pulse-pounding psychological thriller masterpiece engineered by the absolute undisputed sovereign of twisted speculative concepts, dark multi-generational depravity, and high-velocity systemic dread, John Mars. This high-stakes narrative tracking sequence delivers an exceptional look at an operational crossroads where a fierce, underestimated primary maternal asset running an unyielding safety loop, a calculating hidden lineage of legacy serial killer handlers running a high-stakes proximity tracking routine, and an absolute defense against an inheritance of pure structural malice collide at terminal velocity. Let us map the strategic narrative grid. If you are an elite enthusiast of high-octane, slow-burn psychological thrillers where an endangered, hyper-observant female protagonist must navigate an absolute maze of rigged historical properties, corrupt local police legacies, and a deadly ring of active residential frame-ups while running a blind survival loop inside a completely compromised domestic ecosystem, where an analytical mind uses deep behavioral profiling, calculated structural boundaries, and absolute emotional stamina to outmaneuver an invisible predatory executioner network, and where the author utilizes an incandescent, young couple buys a cheap fixer-upper only to discover the skeletal remains of missing children hidden in the walls, unearthing the house's history as a serial killer's lair while someone watches their pregnancy, diagnostic routine to test our hero's structural limits. This book is engineered to lock you in. Mars completely dominates the high-precision House of Horrors renovation meets suffocating familial depravity dynamic, capturing the heart-racing intellectual momentum, suffocating domestic paranoia, and heavy deductive depth popularized by genre vargs like Gillian Flynn, Lisa Jewell, Chris Carter, and Karen Slaughter, while treating realistic forensic skeletal logistics, complex multi-generational trauma alignment arcs, and protective high-density psychological extraction grids with absolute technical mastery. The narrative tracking grid zeroes in on the highly volatile, calculation-heavy baseline of our central legendary powerhouse asset, Mia, operating under a severe, calculation-heavy handicap of a highly vulnerable pregnancy phase, escalating financial strain, and a hyper-visible targeting canvas within her new home's historical database. Behind Mia's rigorous home renovation blueprints and tense personal history logs lies an intricate matrix of hidden faction allegiances, deeply buried high society secrets, and sharp, high-stakes tactical maneuvers. Her collective defense mechanisms are locked down tight behind a lifetime of trying to build a peaceful future with her husband Finn, her entire analytical focus strictly consumed by monitoring sudden threat vectors from an encroaching local stalker parameter, parsing complex behavioral shifts from her overbearing mother-in-law, and shielding her unborn child node from being entirely wiped out by a ruthless elite cleanup offensive. The spark ignites when an unexpected high-frequency structural anomaly breaches their active scanning parameter. A sledgehammer strike during a routine wall demolition exposes a hidden crawlspace containing the preserved remains of multiple children. Instantly, their dream home is cross-referenced with the region's darkest cold case file, the historical operational grid of an elusive, decades-old serial killer cell. The official diagnostic metrics of the Global Tracking Centers flash white hot when the media footprint explodes and an unauthorized perimeter containment routine tightens around the property, manifesting as sinister anonymous letters, lingering neighborhood lookouts, and a calculation-heavy psychological shadow network determined to protect the house's lingering secrets. The standard boundaries of routine domestic remodeling and peaceful civilian compliance protocols crumble, and our central protagonists run completely out of standard diplomatic escape vectors. Mia is thrust directly into an active, invisible war behind the stone walls of her estate, where deceptive local figures masking their true tracking coordinates, highly manipulative system handlers, and a relentless lineage of darkness launch aggressive countermeasures to permanently suppress her family's survival data stream. The tactical parameters instantly explode as their historical and survival warfare turns completely active, transforming the isolated rustic basements, dark structural corridors, and private fortified residential rooms into a volatile psychological pressure cooker and a physical battle zone. Our protective, hyper-vigilant heroine is forced to deploy her massive intuitive tradecraft, elite behavioral mapping skills, and raw maternal stamina to preserve her focus before her adversary's relentless, calculation-heavy proximity containment phase permanently deletes her boundaries.
The threat vector remains purposeful and resolute, determined to deploy deep geographical insulation, continuous psychological gaslighting, and persistent dominance to shatter her defense, only to realize her hardened survival protocols and shifting counter-narratives match their raw tactical speed step for step. Every midnight forensic archival excavation of old building records, every silent choice to stand off against an encroaching adversary behind standard architectural barriers, and every intense moment of channeling raw, unyielding survival mechanics chips away at her reliance on original peaceful rules. What follows is an exceptional high-stakes war of perspective, tactical position, and raw human grit. We watch the community elite's deceptive perimeters completely unwrapped as John Mars reveals that the true victory requires more than just surviving an initial house excavation or managing a difficult marital disclosure. It demands an absolute, uncompromising defense of individual dignity, personal truth, and systemic survival against a cold, calculating machine of domestic manipulation and psychological supremacy. While our central characters smooth over each other's psychological and defensive blind spots with devastating analytical force, creating a fiercely protective, absolute web of dark, possessive loyalty around their shared perimeter, a brutal series of close-quarters tactical confrontations and high-stakes evidentiary breakthroughs shifts the clock into its terminal phase, proving that historical emotional hazards have tracked them to their final outpost. To survive the impending locked grid trap and permanently secure her sanctuary, our resilient heroine must unleash an absolute, unyielding defense of her final boundary lines. It is a psychological thriller, historical crime noir, dark lineage mystery, and high-velocity contemporary puzzle masterpiece that treats deep relational logistics and intense structural friction with elite precision. The tension here burns with a sharp, calculation-heavy intensity. We are talking about that high-frequency, one-shattered cellar wall triggers a fatal ancestral homicide showdown energy, where a sudden pause during an active franchise tactical briefing, an unexpected shift in an adversary's protective physical posture during a high-stakes standoff confrontation, or a heavy, possessive realization that an elite intelligence operative has completely mapped your personal coordinates carries massive structural weight. Mars writes with an exceptionally fresh, vivid, and beautifully blunt voice, capturing the heavy, oppressive atmosphere of a private executive vault before a major corporate takeover, and the distinct subtle scent of polished mahogany, damp plaster, old bone dust, copper, dynamic adrenaline, and pure, unadulterated suspense. What truly elevates this contemporary standalone marvel into elite territory is the author's unmatched ability to balance complex, high-stakes relationship dynamics and genuine protective power tradecraft alongside a breathtaking narrative pace and deep emotional hooks. Our protagonists don't rely on unbelievable, superficial Hollywood superhero action tropes. Their immense situational intelligence, strategic patience, and profound survival instincts match the complexity of the chaotic modern corporate and high society underworld they dominate step for step, making their choices to risk everything feel profoundly authentic and deeply gripping. The pacing moves with calculated momentum, tracking intense conversational standoffs and breathtaking tactical breakthroughs before ratcheting up to an absolute, jaw-dropping conclusion that delivers total, hard-earned advancement to their horizon. Keep It in the Family is the definitive pro-level upgrade your high-stakes contemporary thriller and intense asset suspense library demands right now. It is elegant, immensely fast-paced, and utterly unputdoubtable. It proves that when your entire sanctuary is targeted by a cold, calculating institutional monster, the most revolutionary play you can execute is to lock your perimeters, trust your elite survival training, and fight like hell alongside your network to rewrite the data. So secure your personal reading sanctuary, review your emotional defensive perimeters, open your Kindle, and prepare to track the fleet.